Unfortunately, glaucoma is part of the breed. Breeders can do all the pedigree research and health testing available, but it can still crop up.
If you're passionate about Basset Hounds, this podcast is for you.
This is WOEBGON the Basset Hound podcast. I'm your host, Don Bullock. Hi, everyone, and welcome to WOEBGON the Basset Hound podcast. I'm Don. Basset Hounds have been one of my biggest passions in life for many, many years. Pam and I have had Bassets in our lives for at least 45 years. Those of you who watch the video version of the podcast may have noticed that I'm sitting in a different chair. Pam bought me a new one because the hydraulic mechanism on my old chair kept falling down. You may have noticed that a few segments in episode 3, I was almost sitting on the floor. That old chair was one I bought from damaged furniture section of a store at least 30 years ago. I certainly got my money's worth out of it. This is episode 4 of WOEBGON the Basset Hound podcast. In this podcast, I share the story of Chili, more about the AKC standard for Basset Hounds, glaucoma and Basset Hounds, and attending dog shows, plus some more. I'd like to remind everyone listening to the audio version of WOEBGON the Basset Hound podcast that show notes, including photos of each episode, can be found on our website, WOEBGONbassets.com. In episode 3, I told the story of seeking out a breeder for our next puppy. In case you're wondering, I often recommend that people who contact me are looking for a new puppy to do exactly the same that we did. Attend some dog shows. I mentioned how to find dog shows in episode 3 as well. Now back to Chili's story. We left off with the breeder and us deciding if Chili was the right for us and we were right for him. Chili stayed with the breeder and we went home to consider all we were getting into and if Chili was the right dog for us. A few weeks went by. No, I can't remember how many. Chili's breeder, Gail Allen, contacted us and asked us if we were still interested in him. When Pam responded yes, the two of them set up a day and time for us to meet Chili and Gail at her place. Our excitement grew. We arrived at Gail's place on the date and time we agreed on. Gail met us at the gate again and took us to her house on the property. We went past her partner's house and many other fence enclosures with Bassets in them. Once we were inside Gail's house, she talked to us more about the conditions required for us to have Chili. As with most reputable, responsible breeders, her conditions included issues dealing with Chili's care, where he would live, what we'd do with him when we weren't home, where Chili would sleep, and a lot more. She especially stressed that if any time or any reason we could not keep Chili or care for him, that he'd return to her and no one else, not even our family members. She then would be responsible for finding Chili a new home. Her conditions were fairly similar to the ones we set when people bought puppies from us. Gail also made it clear that if we had any concerns or questions, that we should let her know. Obviously, this was a lot different than the response we got from Lucy's breeder that I mentioned in episode 2. Gail also talked to us about the possibility of me showing Chili. She explained that she thought he could be shown, but made it clear she wasn't selling him as a show dog. Gail explained that she wasn't putting any pressure on us to show Chili, but suggested that since we were already going to a lot of dog shows, that we might want to try showing. Gail made it clear, however, that she was selling Chili as a pet. Pam and I took all this in and we thought about it as time went on, but we still were new to shows and hadn't fully understood how they worked. You may have noticed that we kept Chili's name. One of the things that Gail talked to us about was giving him a name. She made it clear we could name him anything we thought was appropriate for what we referred to as a call name. The name Chili came from his AKC registered name, Tailgate's Chili Willie. Chili Willie was the name of a penguin in one of Gail's favorite cartoons when she was young. But we changed the spelling from Chilly to Chili. After agreeing to all Gail's conditions and paying for Chili, suddenly he was ours. Chili was sitting out on her porch waiting for us. We put him in the backseat of the car in my arms and headed home. Remember, our two homes were about 3 hours apart, so we had a long drive ahead of us. On the way down to Gail's place, we had noticed a McDonald's restaurant and a nice lawn seating area outside of it, right next to the freeway in Temecula, California. It was about an hour north of Gail's place, so that's where we headed. We thought we could get lunch, Chili could relieve himself on the grass. To our surprise and relief, it all worked out real well. So after that brief stop, we headed home. For most of the rest of the trip, Chili slept in my lap. We had set up an exercise pin in our family room for Chili, so when we got home, I placed him in there. We had learned about them at the Basset Hound specialty show. In the pin, we put plenty of blankets and toys to keep him happy. During the day, Pam and I were always in there or in the kitchen that was open to the family room. The family room had a sliding glass door which led out to our backyard, so it was easy to give Chili some outside time out there too. It was very convenient for house training. As soon as Chili woke up from a nap, one of us would pick him up and took him outside. Since we got Chili in the summer, we made plans to be home as much as possible. It was a lot of fun, and we really enjoyed watching him grow up. As Chili developed, we thought he looked a lot like the Basset Hounds we saw at the shows. Honestly, I had no idea what to do when it came to showing a dog, but I've been watching others, and I was sort of learning from them at the shows. A few months after getting Chili, we learned that the Basset Hound Club of Southern California was having a match. Matches are like practice shows. Dogs that are 4 months old or older can be shown in matches. Since Chili would be old enough, we decided to try him, and I was going to show him at the match. We were welcomed to the match by many of the club members that we had met at the shows. Chili received a lot of compliments. Several people told us what we needed to do, especially when filling out the match entry form. They also made sure I knew when to go in the ring with Chili. Chili was a typical stubborn, untrained Basset Hound. If he didn't want to do something, Chili just stopped. Well, it was quickly obvious when we entered the ring that Chili didn't want to go around the ring like the judge had directed me to do. After some coaxing, I finally got him to go around the ring and do just about everything the judge requested, but reluctantly. After our match class was over and we exited the ring, Ralph Scarrow, whom we'd met at the specialty show, talked to me about using some bait to encourage Chili to move around the ring. I explained that we'd just tried that but discovered that Chili wasn't interested in the bait. Although the match didn't go well, I was still very excited about showing Chili. We found a dog show handling class that someone near our home was offering. I took Chili to our first class. He enjoyed the class. Actually, we both did. Unfortunately, the teacher didn't have any experience showing Basset Hounds, so I had to recall what I'd seen at the shows and I'd learned at the match. I did discover, though, that baiting Chili still didn't work. The class was good practice for me and for Chili, and it especially was a great place to socialize Chili. Being around other dogs and people was very good for him. At AKC confirmation shows, puppies can be entered when they're 6 months old. When Chili was old enough, we decided to enter him in some shows near our house. Chili actually enjoyed the experience, and we worked well together. He still was stubborn about moving at times, so people kept trying to help. No matter what they offered me to bait Chili with, like hot dogs and other things, he just wouldn't eat it. In fact, he wouldn't ever eat anything at a show, no matter what we tried. For the shows and handling class, we tried making Gail special liver brownies. She'd given us a recipe and said it worked really well for her dogs. While Chili loved them at home, he never ate one at a show. Pam ruined 2 blenders trying to make them. The stringy liver kept winding around the shaft of the blade, preventing it from spinning. But Chili continued to refuse to eat anything when we were away from home. By Chili's 3rd show, we were doing fairly well in the ring. I moved Chili around the ring as instructed by the judge. Afterwards, I stacked him in front of the judge as I'd learned to do. Stacking is show talk for setting him up in proper position so that the judge could go over him. The judge started to examine by checking his bite. I'll explain this later in the podcast. As she continued to check Chili out and got to his rear end, she said, "Let me go back and check that bite again." And I responded, "Yes, I want to check it too." She proceeded to open Chili's mouth, and there in front of both of us, what's called an undershot bite, something that is a major fault in Basset Hounds. Suddenly, I knew that Chili's showing career was over. Chili's bite had literally changed overnight. Showing had been a lot of fun while it lasted. As you'll find out in future episodes, my showing didn't end that day, though. I continued on. Chili made a wonderful pet. That's essentially why we got him. By working together for showing, the 2 of us became well bonded. He followed me everywhere when I was home. He often could be found in my lap. During the time we had Chili, I was either taking night classes at the local university or teaching classes over there. When I was gone, Chili would curl up in the wing-back chair in our living room in the front of the house and look out the front window, watching for me to come home. He quickly learned the sound of my car, too. That'll pay off a whole lot later. I remember taking a lot of photos of Chili. Unfortunately, back then, I was using a film camera that produced slides rather than prints. So I just don't have a lot of prints for him that I can put into this video version of the podcast. Chili was photographic with his dark eyes and wrinkles. One day I saw a request of photos in the Tally Ho, that's the magazine published by the Basset Hound Club of America. A rescue group within the Basset Hound Club of America called BH Cares was asking for photos for Basset Hounds for a calendar. The group had decided to sell calendars to raise money for rescue efforts. I thought I had a great photo of Chili looking off to one side, and his tongue was like it was licking his lips. I mailed a glossy print of the photo in the format that they requested. Remember, this was long before computers, digital photos, or email. Several weeks later, I received a reply note in the mail. It explained that Chili's photo didn't make the cut for the calendar, but they thought Chili's photo would be perfect for the cover of a cookbook they were working on. I can't remember how long we waited, but one day a package with the BH Cares cookbook came and there was Chili's photo on the cover. I have no idea how many copies were sold, but it was fun knowing that his picture was in kitchens all across the country, and unlike calendars, cookbooks could stick around for a long time. Yes, we have one in our kitchen, and some of you may even have one around your house. If not, it's another thing to search for when you go to antique stores. Yes, we've actually seen them in antique stores. That makes me feel a little older. When Chili was 4, we noticed that one of his eyes was cloudy. Of course, we took him to our vet, who immediately checked him for glaucoma. Indeed, Chili's pressure was high in that eye, so our vet helped make an appointment to go to a canine ophthalmologist. She confirmed our vet's diagnosis and talked to us for quite a while about glaucoma and what we needed to do next. According to her, Chili's glaucoma was most likely inherited, and that 4 was usually the youngest Bassets that got this type of glaucoma. He was on the beginning of a bell-shaped curve that she shared with us. We were given 3 choices. One was leaving the eye and putting in a black ball to maintain its shape, and the ball would show through the lens of the eye. The second was to remove the eye and replace it with an artificial glass eyeball. We went with choice 3, removal of the eye and sewing the eye socket closed. Based on all the information that she gave us, that seemed to be what was best for Chili and perhaps the hardest on us. Remember, his big dark eyes were one of the reasons I fell in love with him. I know some of you are now cringing at the thought of a dog losing an eye to glaucoma and having the eye sewn shut. Believe me, it was a very difficult decision to make. We had to live with it the rest of Chili's life and even think about it today. Unfortunately, glaucoma is part of the breed. Breeders can do all the pedigree research and health testing available, but it can still crop up. I'll cover this later in this episode. For now, let's get back to Chili's story. While Pam and I were totally devastated, Chili was just fine. He didn't care if he lost an eye, and he was free from the pain in his head that came from the glaucoma. Chili went on living his life as if nothing had happened. I was in tears. One thing we learned from ophthalmologists was that in most cases, the second eye was also going to develop glaucoma and about 6 months later. When we asked if there was anything we could do to stop it from happening or at least slow it down, all she could say was we could try the drops that humans use with glaucoma. She cautioned that the chances of the drop helping were slim, but gave us the prescription. We, of course, got the prescription filled and administered the drops as directed. As predicted, about 6 months later, we had Chili's second eye removed. Pam and I had no idea what to do with a blind dog. The term "at wit's end" is definitely appropriate here. While we lost sleep over what had just happened to our boy, Chili was just fine. Remember that stubbornness? Well, it paid off. While we tried to guide Chili through the house and garage out to our dog yard, Chili refused our help and found his way all on his own. He knew the way and used his other senses to get from one place to another without any problems. Chili continued to love life and was a very happy boy. He taught us how important the dog's whiskers are. They helped him sense his surroundings and his sense of smell and hearing. No matter where Chili was in our bedroom, he could find the door. Go out of the bedroom into a short hall, turn left and go down a long hallway into the family room, turn left at the kitchen, go past it into the living room, turn left at the laundry room door, go through it and step down into the garage. Immediately he'd turn right, go to the back of the cars, but not all the way to the garage door, turn left as he passed the second car, go halfway back through the garage, work his way around a door that was opened the wrong way towards him, and out into our yard. He did that all without touching anything. He only had problems on windy days. All we could think was perhaps the wind caused problems with his whiskers. In case you're wondering, yes, Chili waited for me every evening when I was at the university. He was always curled up in his large wingback chair, looking out the front window. Pam told me that as soon as Chili heard my car turn the corner, he got excited. He became more excited when he heard the garage door opening. Chili lived a perfectly normal life. He was just like one of the dogs, and that's the way he wanted it. He wanted to be part of everything the other dogs did. Whenever we tried to step in and help him, Chili just balked and let us know he wanted to do things his way. The Basset Hound Club of Southern California held their famous Basset Hound picnic every year at a big park. We couldn't leave Chili home alone, so we took him along with us with the rest of the dogs. We put him, along with our other Bassets, in an exercise pen under our canopy. Chili could sense when people were approaching and got all excited. Even though Chili couldn't see, he always went right up to them when they reached the side of the X pen. wagged his tail, and simply shook with joy that someone had come to see him. He continued to amaze us. The picnic included some contests. Some included dogs in costumes. One year, Chili was a chili dog. After he lost both eyes, I dressed Chili up as a pirate with a patch on both eyes. Chili won third place for that one. Chili simply thrived at all the attention he got. They also had a howling contest at the picnic every year. Pam, her mother, and I each took one of our boys into the ring and got them to howl. It was a howling trio. They were fantastic and won. Those of you in Southern California may have actually seen them on TV. A guy named Huell Hauser filmed the picnic that year and aired it on his TV program.
That's the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life. Oh, that's wonderful.
A, B, and C.
A, B, and C. This is serious business. Who is going to win the howling contest at this year's Basset Hound picnic? Boy, this is going to be a tough one. So the trio wins.
Joining Chili in the trio were Sam and Moose. There's even a copy of it on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description on our website. One time we took Chili to a friend's house after a club specialty show. We let him go in her backyard with many of the other Bassets. We watched to make sure that Chili was okay. As we watched, we saw him cautiously circle the outside of the whole yard, right along the edge of the house and fences, and when he returned to the place where he started, Chili began crossing through the yard. He flirted with every Basset he met as he wandered around. Chili had no idea where he was, but he didn't care. He was having fun. I could go on about Chili. He was an amazing dog that taught us many lessons. We need to remember when thinking about Chili that Basset Hounds were bred historically to hunt with their noses, not sight. We class them today as scent hounds, not sight hounds. According to modern scientific information, Bassets are only second to bloodhounds in their scenting abilities. This factor was evident in the way Chili was able to get around without his eyes. When it came to breeding, we were very careful to make sure that the dogs we were selecting were not involved with glaucoma as best we could. We didn't want anyone to go through what we had gone through when we found out that he had had glaucoma, if that was at all possible. We did our due diligence to closely, carefully examine the pedigrees of all the dogs that we used. We need to cover the obvious health issue, glaucoma, in Basset Hounds. Yes, it's more common in our breed than many other breeds of dogs. Glaucoma is a disease that results in progressive degeneration of the optic nerve and the retinal ganglion cells. There is now a genetic test for the less prevalent primary open-angle glaucoma. However, there is currently no genetic test for the more prevalent primary closed-angle glaucoma, which Chili had. Obviously, reputable, responsible breeders should test both the prospective sire and dam they are planning to breed for primary open-angle glaucoma. It's incumbent on those who buy puppies to insist on seeing the actual test results. Things like this are too easy to fake or lie about. All that, however, doesn't relieve the responsibility of breeders to do everything possible to avoid primary closed-angle glaucoma because it's much more prevalent in the breed. Since testing isn't possible now, breeders need to first of all be honest with each other. For far too long, some breeders have hidden or denied the occurrence of glaucoma in their dogs or the pedigrees of their dogs. Some of them believe that if glaucoma hasn't occurred in several generations, a number they determine is long enough just on their own, not from research, that they're free of the disease and they don't need to worry about it. I've personally seen too many cases where this theory was wrong and glaucoma occurred in their puppies. Careful examination of pedigrees and the honest exchange of information are necessary to lower the chances of glaucoma. Until a foolproof genetic test is developed, that's all that can be done. Breeders need to explain the possibility of glaucoma to those who get their puppies. Part of that education should also include information on how to spot glaucoma and what it does to the dog. Pam and I certainly would have benefited from that information, but in those days, breeders didn't seem to be as concerned about glaucoma as most seem to be today. Now, back when Chili developed glaucoma, the bell-shaped curve for the disease started around age 4. From what I've recently heard from one researcher, the beginning of the curve seems to have moved down to the age of 2. That same researcher stated that we're seeing more glaucoma today than back when we had Chili, which is a reason why breeders today are more aware of the disease. Puppy buyers today have to understand that their puppy could develop glaucoma no matter what the breeder does, and it's not the breeder's fault. Yes, Chili's glaucoma was not Gail Allen's fault. She was using all the resources available at the time, following good breeding practices. There was nothing Gail could have done to predict or prevent Chili's glaucoma. Breeders who are doing everything they can to breed healthy dogs like Gail was doing can't be held responsible for any inherited diseases. Perhaps someday a genetic test for this form of glaucoma will be developed. I can assure you there's been a lot of time, tremendous effort, and money put into that end already, and it hasn't been successful. I'd also like to caution you about the 2 tests that some claim can predict the possibility of glaucoma. One is a gonioscopy. It's an eye examination to look at the front part of the eye between the cornea and the iris. Gonioscopy is a painless examination to see whether the area where the fluid drains out of, called the drainage angle, is open or closed. For years, people, including Basset Hound breeders, thought this test could predict the possibility of future glaucoma in dogs. More recently, some researchers have claimed there's an eye test using ultrasound that can predict the possibility of glaucoma in dogs. According to my research, this is an unproven test. According to the latest information from the Basset Hound Club of America and its Health Research Committee, there's no determinative genetic test for the more prevalent primary closed-angle glaucoma, nor are there diagnostic tests that are able to reliably predict the onset of the disease. The key here is the word reliability, reliably. There's no reliability in the tests. In my opinion, if a test isn't reliable, essentially it's useless. Also going on, in my opinion, anyone claiming otherwise is simply not willing to accept the facts or is fooling themselves and, perhaps worse, misleading others, including puppy buyers. If you want to know more about the research, there's a link on the Basset Hound Club of America website to a webinar on the topic presented by 2 of the researchers who conducted some of the research. Just so you know, it's about an hour long, but it's a very valuable information, especially for breeders. Yes, that's where I got some of this information. As in the past, I'm recommending the website of the Basset Hound Club of America as an excellent place to start your research on glaucoma in Bassets. If you want further information, I strongly recommend consulting a licensed canine ophthalmologist. Your veterinarian may be able to recommend one for you. As I alluded to in my story of Chili, bites in Basset Hounds are mentioned in the AKC standard. Essentially, there are 4 types of bites in dogs. The first one is called a scissors bite. If you think of how a pair of scissors cut, one blade passing tightly over the other blade, that's how it got its name. In a scissors bite, the upper teeth slide across the bottom teeth and end up just in front of them. An even bite is a lot like it sounds. The top front teeth and bottom front teeth meet together tightly, but not overlapping at all. Neither one is in front of the other. In an overshot bite, the top jaw, including the front teeth, extends far beyond the bottom teeth. The fourth type is what Chili had. It's an undershot bite. This is where the bottom teeth are in front of the top teeth. While this is what's required in bulldogs, for example, it's not in Basset Hounds. That's why I immediately knew that I could no longer show Chili. Our AKC standard says teeth are large, sound, and regular, meaning in either a scissors or even bite. A bite either overshot or undershot is a serious fault. So in a Basset Hound, either a scissors or even bite are both fully and equally acceptable, but not an overshot or an undershot, because they're called serious faults. It's interesting that in judging, some parts of the standard aren't checked by all judges. This is something I continue to point out in future episodes. Bites, however, are rarely missed. Over the years we've been involved in showing, I've rarely seen a judge that has forgotten to check a dog's bite. Therefore, in a Basset without a scissors or even bite, they'll have no chance or very little chance in the show ring. Besides, a breeder wouldn't want to breed a dog with an unacceptable bite. Those four are the most common bites in dogs. While there are others, the point here is that Basset Hounds bite can be either scissors or even bite, and they're equally acceptable according to the standard. Now, it's important for all of you to know that every breed has its own requirements as to acceptable bites. Some are very strict, and others, the type of bite really doesn't matter. For those of you who have a Basset Hound with a bite other than a scissors or even bite, you really don't need to be concerned. As long as the bite doesn't interfere with eating or anything else, it's really not that important to you. Some of you may even have a Basset that the Basset Hound breeder sold because of the bite. We've sold some of our most beautiful puppies due to an undershot bite. And in case you're wondering, they do have braces for dogs, but AKC doesn't allow those to be used for dogs that are in conformation, so you can't alter the bites of the dogs. In fact, the very first dog we sold was the absolute pick of the litter. We had to sell him because he developed an undershot bite. Now, I'm sorry if you heard Keiko's barking in the background. I don't know what he's barking about, but he's not happy about something, I guess, or he wants some attention. The bite brings up another standard myth. Some people think that an even bite is less desired than a scissors bite. I even know of a prominent member of the Basset Hound Club of America and Basset Hound judge recently posting on Facebook that he or she had noticed a lot of even bites when judging at a show and was showing some concern over the situation. No, I'm not going into names. As stated in the AKC standard for the Basset Hound, can have either a scissors or even bite. That's very clear. A scissors or even bite are equally acceptable. Both are equally acceptable. All judges should not judge them differently here in the United States. Where some confusion may come from is that the Kennel Club FCI standards state regular, complete scissors bite, i.e. upper teeth come closely overlapping lower teeth and set square to the jaw. In countries that use these standards, an even bite is a serious fault. I distinctly remember the Basset Hound Club of Southern California hiring a judge from England to judge our specialty show. When we have foreign judges judge in this country, they should judge according to our AKC standard, not the one from the country where they are from. But that doesn't always happen. I was showing a girl, Snow White at the time, in Bred by Exhibitor class. It's a class in which all the Bassets were being shown by their breeders. Snowy had an even bite. This judge seemed to really like Snowy, but I could tell her bite was bothering him. After fully examining her, he went back to Snowy's mouth. He took his thumbnail and rubbed it down along the upper front teeth to see if it would catch on the bottom teeth. He repeated the same thing several times, seeing if his thumbnail would catch on the bottom teeth. The judge was doing this to assure himself that he wasn't awarding a Basset Hound with an undershot bite. After all the girls in Snowy's class had been examined, we moved around the ring for the one last time, and he pointed to her for first in her class. He went on to select Snow White for what's called winner's bitch. Winner's dog and winner's bitch are the best non-champions at a dog show in their breed. That also qualified Snowy for best of breed competition against all the champions that are entered in the show. Later in the day, Snowy and I entered the ring with all of the champions. The judge examined all the champions and then got down to the winners at the end of the line. He approached Snowy and again rubbed his thumb along her teeth, just as he did in the class. This time it seemed he was trying even harder to catch his thumbnail on the bottom teeth, with no success. The judge proceeded to select best of breed. He chose a male for best of breed. Next, the judge pointed to Snow White and said, best of winners and best of opposite sex. That meant, in his opinion, Snowy was the best between all of the winners and the best female or bitch in the show. Even all the champion bitches were not as good as Snowy in his opinion. Although Snowy had an even bite, which was a fault in his country, the judge still was willing to follow the AKC standard while judging in this country. Yes, we were excited. Winning best of opposite sex from the classes isn't very common. Most often, a champion is selected. Now, as a breeder, I can see why there might be some concern regarding even bites. Perhaps some might be fearful that breeding a dog with an even bite might produce some puppies with undershot bites. This may be due partly from inexperience. In our experience, that didn't happen. We got all scissors bites in a litter we had out of our Snow White. Yes, all 7 of Snowy's puppies had scissors bites. By the way, the announcement that we made for Snowy's litter was Snow White and the 7 dwarfs. All the puppies were named after the dwarfs. Yes, we had Happy, Doc, Sneezy, Dopey, Bashful, Sleepy, and of course, Grumpy. I've recommended that all of you should attend a dog show in previous episodes. They are great ways to see well-bred, good examples of our breed and meet other Basset Hound owners and breeders. You'll quickly find out that we're a really friendly group and love to talk about our dogs. In this episode, I thought I'd mention a little about what to expect and things to do and not do when you go to a dog show. Again, remember that dog shows run on time, so get there early. When you arrive at a dog show, obviously you'll need to find a place to park. Most dog shows have a parking fee, so be prepared for that. There may be information about the fee on the superintendent's website, or it should be listed in the judging schedule or judging program for the show. When going through the parking lot, there will be a lot of dogs and some children. Exhibitors may also be in the aisles pushing or pulling dog crates and all their stuff to the show ring or after they've shown back to their vehicles. Just be prepared. Once you're parked, it should be obvious which direction you should go to find the showgrounds. Just head in that direction and you should be fine. Once you arrive at the actual show site, you should notice that the space has been divided somehow into rings. These should be numbered. These numbers should be obvious, but sometimes they're hard to find. If in doubt, just ask someone and they should be able to tell you where the show ring you're looking for is. Every show has at least one table set up with people that can answer questions you may have. That also may be where you can buy a show catalog, which I've recommended especially for those of you who are interested in breeders. If you're early as recommended, some exhibitors may be near the ring waiting for the show time. If they aren't busy grooming their dogs or doing something else, most will be happy to talk to you. Just understand that the closer it gets to showtime, the more the exhibitors will be preparing their dogs for the show. While you might not think of them as athletes, that's exactly what they are. Each one has their own method of preparing their dogs and themselves for showing, and some may not like to be disturbed. Waiting until after the dogs are shown to talk to exhibitors is often better than just before the show starts. Right after showing, you also may need to give the exhibitors a few minutes to wind down. They've just finished showing their dogs and may still be rethinking what happened, especially if they didn't win. Even those who do win may take a while to wind down from the excitement of winning, or they may be waiting for a photo with the judge. You need to understand that showing dogs is like any other sport where there are winners and losers. So the best time to talk to people at shows is well ahead of the show time and after everything has just happened and everything's settled in. If you keep that in mind, you'll find most Basset Hound owners and breeders are willing and happy to talk about their dogs and Basset Hounds in general. Yes, and we'll brag about them too. We're usually a very friendly bunch. Remember that dog shows are American Kennel Club events, so they are governed by AKC rules. Dog show rules prohibit unentered dogs on the showgrounds. There's a good reason for this. Show dogs of different ages, sizes, and temperaments are able to get along together on the show's sometimes tight quarters because they're used to it and most of their handlers know how to control them. By contrast, dogs that are unaccustomed to shows may be overwhelmed. Rather than frustrating your dog, the better option is to leave your beloved pet at home, and believe me, you'll be glad you did. I'll be including more on what to expect at shows, why dog shows are only for purebred, registered dogs, as well as why shows are important for all of us in future podcasts. I didn't receive any listener questions through the website this time, but I did find one on the internet that I thought was very important and should be answered here. Someone asked, "I have a serious question. This is the first time with a pregnant Basset. I had beagles and pits that I bred years ago. I've heard some horror stories with Basset birth. Have your girls ever had problems birthing or things I should watch out for during labor? I'm a worried mama. Just want my girl to be okay." First of all, this is a situation I'd suggest that none of you ever find yourselves in. The person's concerns are real. The fact that she's heard some horror stories regarding whelping Bassets should have motivated her to check into what was happening before the Basset became pregnant. Unfortunately, it was too late by the time she asked the question. That's because the puppies were expected to be whelped in 2 days based on an x-ray that her vet took. My response to her, I stated you should always be prepared for an emergency C-section. Make sure you know where the closest emergency facility is and the quickest way to get there. You might even give them a call ahead of time just so they know that they might be needed. I went on to tell her, in order to determine if puppies are really ready for whelp or a C-section, reverse progesterone tests can be done. Your vet may not have the equipment, but should be able to direct you to one who does. For you, my listeners, I'll add that her qualms are real. In future podcasts, I'll share more regarding what can go wrong and how the modern discovery of the reversed progesterone numbers is fantastic. If any of you ever decide to breed your girl, please reach out to someone who can give you good professional advice, like a veterinarian who specializes in reproduction and has had experience with Bassets. It's also a good idea to find a good mentor, someone who's had multiple Basset Hound litters. Unlike some breeds, breeding Bassets isn't automatic. Please consider submitting your own questions for the podcast. If you want to know anything related to the breed, the AKC, events that you can have your Basset Hound in, even if they're not registered, Basset Hound rescue, shows, or anything else, please don't hesitate to ask. You can submit a recorded question or a question by email using the links on our website, WOEBGONTheBassets.com. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Now, here are some puppy photos from Georgia in Italy. You may recall that she's the one that asks if Bassets can get loud and also if she could take them to the beach. Hope you enjoy her photos. Here they are. The quote for this episode is from John Grogan, who's famous for Marley and Me and other books about Marley. He said, "Such short little lives our pets have to spend with us, and they spend most of it waiting for us to come home each day." It reminds me of Chili sitting in that chair waiting for me to come home each evening after I was at the university. I hope you enjoyed Chili's story. While the loss of his eyes seems to be terrible for most of us, Chili continued to have a very happy life. Yes, glaucoma is a disease that all breeders should do their best to avoid, but it's something that Bassets can adjust to, just as Chili did. I'm hoping that all of you who have never been to a dog show attend one in the near future. If you do, please send me an email telling about your experience. In the next episode, I'll share Sam's story. He was a wonderful Basset. We really enjoyed Sam. I'll be sharing more about the history of Basset Hounds, specifically why they're considered English breed, not French, as well as an important condition all Basset Hound owners should know about, bloat. It's a condition that could quickly kill your Basset. Remember, there are show notes for this episode along with the previous episodes on our website, WOEBGONTheBassets.com. Along with information on the episodes, I've included photos that go along with the episodes. Some of those photos weren't included in the YouTube version of the podcast. The show notes page also includes important links that you might want to use. I thank you all very much for listening.
WOEBGON the Basset Hound podcast is published in visual form on YouTube the first Monday of every month. A full-length audio version of each episode is published 1 week later wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our WOEBGON Basset's website for show notes including photos from every episode. You can also find links to the podcast plus information on Don and his wife Pam plus their Basset Hounds. WOEBGON the Basset Hound podcast is produced, researched, and hosted by Don Bullock. The music is Do Your Ears Hang Low played by Nasrality from the Philippines. It's available royalty-free on Pixabay. Please give this podcast a thumbs up on YouTube and a high rating wherever you listen to podcasts.
Until next time, this is Don. Thank you very much for listening.